welcome everybody to episode 1 of the King and Pocket Aces Fantasy Sports Show. I'm one of your hosts, Pocket Aces, Anthony Aniano, and joining me, the King of Fantasy Sports, Mr. Scott Engel. Scott, we're reunited. This is going to be fun. Together once a week. How you doing, my friend?
You know, we've been looking forward to doing this for a long time, Anthony. I've been looking forward to doing it. You know, every time that, we do something together, whether it's on fantasy sports radio or video, we enjoy each other. The RotoBaller listeners and subscribers seem to enjoy it. So we got together, with big minds up top, and we said, why don't we make this a thing? So, here we go, and yeah. I'm ready. Let's roll. Reunion tour 2021.
Absolutely, going back over 10 years, almost 10 years with SiriusXM, and all sorts of fun stuff. And guys, just letting you know, we're covering everything here in the world of fantasy sports. We're going to talk football each and every week. We're going to talk baseball news, whatever's going on, baseball, fantasy football analysis, NBA, and NASCAR, one of Scott's favorites. And obviously, hit us up on Twitter. My Twitter is at Aniano Fantasy. Scott, you're at Scott E. King, if I remember correctly.
Scotty the King.
Scotty the King. And hit us up there. And if there's anything you want us to talk about, hit us up on Twitter, and we'll get it in on the very next episode. So make sure you hit us up there and let us know. But, Scott, we're going to start today in the NFL. The Super Bowl now has come and gone. Congratulations to the Tampa Bay Bucks. But as you and I both know, fantasy football is 12 months a year. And here we go. We have already had trades. Draft is coming up. Free agency's coming up. And the first thing I wanted to hit you up with was the trade that occurred during the week before the Super Bowl. Detroit Lions sending Matt Stafford to the Rams. Jared Goff going to really what could end up being a decimated Detroit offense after free agency is all said and done. Some draft picks, a couple of first-round picks there. But when you look now at this Rams offense with Stafford and Kupp and Cam Akers and Robert Woods, second year for Van Jefferson, how do you now – is there a significant upgrade for you with the skill positions of this offense now with Matt Stafford under center?
I would certainly think so, but I think it's more of an upgrade for Stafford than anybody else. Now, before I get into it, just let me say one thing about the Super Bowl. Will you stop about the referees already? Okay.
I agree.
Kansas City scored 9 freaking points.
I agree.
The referees didn't make a difference. Okay. Usually when you complain about the refs, your team didn't do enough to win anyway.
Biggest issue with that game was Kansas City not having any offensive tackles. But that's a conversation for another day.
Yeah, like if the refs didn't make those calls, okay, you win. They would have won what 31-12.
Yeah, okay? Maybe they would have gotten another field goal. Exactly.
Big whoop. All right.
Anyway,
Sammy Watkins didn't show up again. Anyway, but with the Rams, this is really good for Stafford. I think everything was in place to succeed. You know, we saw this offense in 2018 and other seasons, be one of the best in the NFL. I mean, Jared Goff had a really good year in 2018 as a product of this system. Matthew Stafford is better than Jared Goff. He's more talented. He's got a better arm. He throws into tighter windows much better. He's got a much better release. I think, 2 years ago that McVay got the best out of Goff he could possibly get. Goff was drafted where he was drafted. I don't know why. When you watch him now, looking back, all cliche hindsight 2020, just not talented as Stafford. This is the first time in the common draft era where 2 number 1 overall picks have ever been traded for each other. But Stafford is clearly more talented. I know he's going to be 30 years old, but okay, stop with something else. 33 years, not old for a quarterback. Guy just won the Super Bowl and he's 43 years old.
No, Scott, let me ask you this, though. Matthew Stafford, going to be 33 years old. In his career, a couple of winning seasons. He's won 11 games. He's won 10 games. But an interesting number. For all the praise Matthew Stafford has gotten as being a talented quarterback, he's thrown for over 30 touchdowns only twice. Okay? And in 2015, he threw for 32. And in his first full season, really as a starter, where first time he played 16 games at 23 years old in 2011, he threw for 41. At some point, is Matthew Stafford more wishful thinking good? Or is this now a situation where are we going to finally see a 33, 34, 35 touchdown season out of this guy?
Well, let's remember that football is a team game. Okay, Tom Brady just won the Super Bowl. He walked into a situation where he was surrounded by the most offensive talent in his career. Mm-hmm. Matthew Stafford's been surrounded by a bad organization, mediocre coaching, mediocre talent around him, except for when he had Calvin Johnson. He's never had the consistent report of a running game. Now he gets Cam Akers, who they wanted to have part of building the offense around. He's got two really good receivers in Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods. You know, we don't know if Josh Reynolds is coming back, but Van Jefferson's a nice number 3. He walks into a situation where he's got a lot more talent around him, and it's a winning culture. It's a winning environment. He's walked into a very good situation, better than just about anything that he's ever had in Detroit. It's not his fault that they didn't win any playoff games or that, you know, they've hardly had any winning seasons. You know, the guy tried to do what he could do with hardly anything around him. Now he's got a lot of talent around him. I believe the floor is about 30 touchdowns and 4,500 passing yards. I did a breakdown of this. You can check it out on rotoballer.com. You know, I think this guy there's probably about 8 quarterbacks where I definitely couldn't rank him ahead of Stafford, but I think he slots in about 10th or 11th for me overall going into next year. If you're in a dynasty league and you have Stafford, I think you feel comfortable heading into the next year. In a keeper league where I keep 3 people, I'm probably not doing it, but Matthew Stafford's a back-end quarterback number 1 with some upside for next year, Ant.
Interesting. So he's now a top 12 guy, which he hasn't necessarily been. He's been that late round, right? We all say don't draft quarterback early. So he's been that guy after everybody's gobbled up quarterbacks. You've been able to take him a little bit later in the draft and get good results out of him. Okay, he is not injury prone. Anybody who thinks Matthew Stafford is injury prone is missing the point of Matthew Stafford. 2019, he played 8 games. Every year other than that, since 2011, he's played all 16 games. Don't worry about him getting hurt. I love this Rams offense, Scott. I'm with you on that. Cam Akers, I think personally, when we talk about Cam Akers, as we get closer and closer to draft season, the hype on Cam Akers is going to have him pushing into the first round of some fantasy football drafts.
Yeah, I already have him like late first, early second. He's inside my top 10. If a guy performs well in the playoffs, and we saw this with DK Metcalf last year when he had the big NFC wildcard game against the Eagles. If a rookie player, okay, or a young player performs well on the big stage of the playoffs, and he did it in 2 games, he had now a historical performance in the NFC wildcard game against Seattle. That, to really me, is a harbinger of things to come. If you perform well when the stakes are the highest, when the spotlights are the brightest, and whatever other cliches and comparisons I can find, Anthony, in my head right now, what I'm saying is that means that this kid is built for prime time. Sean McVay handpicked Cam Akers. He wanted to tie his offense around him. When they drafted him last year, Anthony, he picked him with the first overall selection that they had available, even though they had other needs. Cam Akers, he's an RB1 for next year, you know, in my estimation. And Matthew Stafford's never had that kind of support running-wise.
I agree. But now my next question. What about Detroit? Kenny Golladay, a free agent. Danny Amendola, a free agent. Marvin Jones, a free agent. It's Jared Goff. It's TJ Hawkinson as we speak today. And then it's DeAndre Swift, who did show glimpses of being a legitimate high-end running back going into next season. But because of how this offense, as we sit right now, and you figure they'll bring in somebody to catch the ball for Jared Goff. But nonetheless, does DeAndre Swift, with this change now in offense, does he slide down your draft boards as we sit here in February?
I don't have him as high as Akers, regardless, but he showed a lot of promise. Versatile all-around player, goal line potential, in the green zone there, in the money zone inside the 10-yard line. So I think he's a good running back too. With the Lions, they're the Lions. Jared Goff probably isn't the worst quarterback league. He isn't the best. They're saying that publicly all the right things, that Goff is their guy, but still they have a top 10 pick inside the draft. Maybe they take a quarterback and that guy battles Goff. Kenny Golladay, they might not be able to retain him. I think we have to see how the offense fleshes out, but there's definitely RB2 potential here. As we sit here in February, I think it's kind of early. We're before free agency, before the draft, to see how things flesh out for the Lions.
Well, we've kind of talked about now, one of my favorite times of any sports season, whether it's football or baseball, is the hot stove, the offseason, the free agency talk. And we've mentioned a couple of big names in free agency that are coming that way. We've mentioned
is it really a hot stove in football? Isn't that like a baseball
That's
thing?
baseball.
What do they have to give it a football name?
What do they call it in football?
We call it the dishwasher or something.
How about a percolating
another
pigskin?
Kitchen appliance?
The percolating pigskin.
Wow, I like that. This
You
is
like
why I want
that?
to do a show with you.
I just came up with that right now. I'm kind of
Stuff
excited
like
by that. So it's the percolating pigskin season for the NFL. We got to trademark that, my friend. But during this season, so we mentioned Kenny Golladay. You have Allen Robinson. You have Juju Smith-Schuster. You have Chris Godwin, who I think Tampa's going to try to bring back. So there are some wide receivers out there who are difference maker type of players. What are your thoughts on? Let's start with Allen Robinson. Do the Bears retain him? You and I are in the New York area. You hear about the Jets interested in A-Rob. What is your take on Allen Robinson and some destinations that make sense to you?
Well, I'm going to lump in Allen Robinson with Golladay because those are the two big ticket free agent out there. And then you look at the teams that that have the most money available under the salary cap and have the most need. You look at the Jets. You look at the Dolphins. People don't mention Miami often enough as a team. Jacksonville, Trevor Lawrence needs weaponry, and they're going to have a lot of salary cap room. At least it's looking that way.
Almost $75 million in cap space for the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Golladay could, or that could be a prime landing spot. I don't know if Allen Robinson would want to go to Jacksonville. And then, there's the big one with flashing lights is Baltimore. Marquise Brown's not a number one, but he could be a number two. If Lamar Jackson had a Kenny Golladay, who's a big playmaker, or Allen Robinson, who's Mr. Super Ultra Dependable, these teams, look at them one by one really quick. With Baltimore, Lamar Jackson hasn't shown us enough as a passer. Maybe he could use somebody more dependable like an Allen Robinson. I think he'd be a better fit there. With Miami, with Tua, Robinson could be a good fit there. With the Jets, I like somebody like Golladay because there's some receiving potential already there, and then Golladay becomes that true star that they have. You got Jameis and Crowder can move the chains. You have Denzel Mims. So to me, Robinson's really a good fit anywhere, but I like Golladay better with the Jets just from a pure schematic perspective. But, we've seen Golladay catching passes from backup quarterbacks when Stafford was injured, and with Robinson catching passes from Trubisky when he's been playing bad. So I think, these guys still have potential to be number one fantasy wide receivers wherever they land.
Yeah. I mean, you talk about Baltimore. Baltimore's sitting at about almost $27 million in cap space. Miami's sitting at almost $32 million. Washington football team has some money to spend as well at almost $33 million. They could use somebody opposite a Terry McLaurin in Washington.
Robinson would be a better fit there, yeah. Or Golladay too, though, because a big play receiver. Washington's a good spot. that's somewhere you mentioned too that I just didn't think of off the top of my head. There's another good call by you there.
Well, what's interesting to me, though, Scott, is you mentioned Robinson and you mentioned Golladay, but you didn't mention Juju Smith-Schuster. Is that on purpose? Do you not put him in the class of A-Rob and Golladay?
No, those are the two top guys. It's, to me, Juju Smith-Schuster goes somewhere, and Indianapolis is another consideration that we did mention of as well, and we have to see what the quarterback situation is there. But Juju Smith-Schuster to me is somewhere where he was playing with Pittsburgh in the slot and he adjusted well, but he figures he could be more of the outside. I think, and I don't want to discredit Juju like this. He seems like a really good guy, but to me, he's like a consolation if you don't get Golladay or you don't get Allen Robinson. Allen Robinson's a big building block, especially for a young quarterback. So to me, Juju Smith-Schuster has to prove that he's more than just a fantasy wide receiver 3 to us. He could go somewhere where there's already an established, wide receiver, and he can end up being the number 2 as well.
Well, he had his best success playing opposite Antonio Brown. He has not lived up to the hype since AB's been out of Pittsburgh and Juju's been the quote-unquote number 1. And then you saw this year, he got outplayed by Deontay Johnson. I mean, that's just the way it went in Pittsburgh. And we know Pittsburgh is in a terrible salary cap situation, and they're deep at wide receiver. So Juju's going to go. Pittsburgh will move on with Claypool and Washington and Deontay Johnson. No room from there. But you mentioned Indianapolis, which is interested in bringing T.Y. back, but Juju there opposite T.Y. with Michael Pittman, a nice fit there. And again, Indianapolis, okay, almost $70 million in cap space. Granted, they got to figure out their quarterback situation, but they can add another wide receiver to already an outstanding ground game as long as they find the right guy on the center. And, we know there's, as of the time of the taping of this show, a lot of Carson Wentz rumors happening there in Indianapolis.
Yeah. I didn't know we're taping this show. Is like Sean Engel's our producer here. Is he using a VCR?
I hope so. Recording, taping, maybe he's got the old reel out, in black and white, old school 8mm film, maybe. However he records it.
Yeah, I remember when I was a kid, we actually used to watch we used to put the slides in on a projector and actually
there was the 2 wheels and it came. Oh yeah.
Damn, I'm old. Crap.
I want to know how many of our listeners even know what a VCR tape is, let alone an 8mm or something, right, Scott?
Yeah. But, make a good point with the Colts. We have to see what, it's fun speculating, but the bottom line is, as long as Golladay stays healthy, he's the number 1. Allen Robinson is the number 1. Juju Smith-Schuster has to prove he's more than a fantasy wide receiver 3. And you look at what these guys leave behind. Detroit's going to have a hole if they lose Golladay. The Bears are going to have a huge hole. I heard something funny the other day, our producer on Sirius XM, Ben and Carroll said some Bears fans saying that Darnell Mooney can be a number 1. That's one of the funniest things I've heard this offseason outside of the Seahawks should trade Russell Wilson, which is also hysterical. But if Juju
that was when I saw that news that teams were calling about Russell Wilson. I was like, hey, you know what? Shoot your shot. It's like, you might not be the best looking guy in the ball, but you went up to the prettiest girl. Worst thing you could do is she says no. And that's essentially what some teams did with Russell Wilson.
Yeah, well, I'm roundabout getting to the point about Juju, but I'll make that point first, is that when he leaves Pittsburgh, that really opens up the door for, Deontay Johnson to become that number 1. I saw that old cliched writing on the wall. They've chased Claypool there, so they don't need Juju. And Pittsburgh, they've moved on from number 1 wide receivers throughout history, whether it's Plaxico Burress, Antonio Holmes, Hines Ward, just because he retired. We could go on forever. Antonio Brown. They move on from number 1 wide receivers, and they don't miss a beat.
Yep.
And Russell Wilson, some of my fellow Seahawk fans, I'm like, you got to stop this about trading Russell Wilson. It's the NFL is such a what have you done for me lately last week kind of league. and the guy had an up and down second half and not a good playoff game, and all of a sudden they forget what he first 8.5 years, and let's trade the guy. It's ridiculous. It's when you don't win a playoff game that way, the quarterback gets the most blame and he gets the most credit, and it's too extreme sometimes. It's very hard to get a quarterback of Wilson's caliber in the NFL. There's only a handful of guys like that.
Yeah, I agree. Russell Wilson should be a Seahawk for the remainder of his career, as close to it as possible. Scott, one other free agent.
Better be.
One other free agent I did want to get your thoughts on is Aaron Jones of the Green Bay Packers. We know there's been rumors of a messy situation brewing with Aaron Rodgers and Packers management. I'm like you, though. I don't think Aaron Rodgers is going anywhere, at least not for the upcoming season. But Packers are in a tough salary cap situation, okay? And there's going to be decisions that have to be made there. They're already, $29 million over the cap, so they got to make decisions. They still have Jamal Williams. They drafted A.J. Dillon. It's going to be tough to keep Aaron Jones. But you're looking at a guy with over 21 rushing yards over the last 2 seasons, a guy with 25 rushing touchdowns over the last 2 seasons, and he is 26, going to be 27 years old. Does a team overpay for Aaron Jones, and will Aaron Jones still carry that RB1 status if he's outside of Green Bay?
He's a very good running back, so I think he certainly has the potential. Again, we go back, look at the teams with the most salary cap room, and then the ones that needed the running back. Again, the Dolphins and the Jets jump out at me. The Jets really swung and missed because they had Adam Gase, and I guess at the end of the day, they're the Jets, with Le'Veon Bell.
That's what I was going to ask you. Do they go back to the running back free agency after failing miserably on Bell?
Well, this is a new regime. Robert Saleh is there now, and all of a sudden it might be an attractive place to go. There's been rumors of Richard Sherman going to the Jets because they want to change the culture there. It's been a very losing culture for the last decade plus, and they want to change it. It's about changing the culture.
Scott, it's been a losing culture there since Joe Namath. All right,
I know. It's funny to say, but in those last 2 years of the previous decade, they were a top contender in the AFC. Being realistic, it's fun to kick around the Jets and say, they haven't been good since 1969, but they were a pretty good team in 2010, and since then, though, it's been absolutely pathetic, and. They're trying to change the culture there and, picking up a player like Aaron Jones. But I could see Miami more making a play for somebody like that. The culture's already changed in Miami, and that's a missing piece. But a lot of the published reports, and there's a report about Pittsburgh because Pittsburgh's running back needy. So, that's something that we have to consider as well. The Steelers, but they don't have the money under the cap. But all the reports I'm reading is that the Packers really want to retain him. Jamal Williams is a free agent. He's, it doesn't seem like he's coming back. And there are other running backs out there. Maybe the Jets or the Dolphins take a crack at, say, somebody like Chris Carson, who's probably not going to come back to Seattle. But my long-winded answer here is there's a strong chance he goes back to Green Bay, and it's a combination backfield between Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon, and fantasy-wise, it drives us crazy.
Yeah, that's. I was going to say the same thing. If he goes back to Green Bay and Jamal Williams is gone, you're not going to be happy with that situation because we saw glimpses of how good A.J. Dillon could be, and we know what Aaron Jones could be, and both of those guys in a even if it's a 60-40 split, is just going to be tough for fantasy value. You mentioned Chris Carson. He's a free agent. Leonard Fournette, but he wants to go back to Tampa Bay. And we just know teams do. Right. I mean, Tampa Bay saved his career, essentially. So it makes sense that Aaron Jones is the big fish at the running back position. Scott, one more football topic I wanted to hit you up on, and then we'll slide over to some baseball talk.
Hit me.
Word coming out of New Orleans is that Jameis Winston has a legitimate shot, okay, of being the starting quarterback of the Saints next season. Okay, he is a free agent. Makes sense for him to return to New Orleans. But I think everybody's diving in the Taysom Hill pool. But, how do you view this coach speak about Jameis Winston?
I really don't know what's going to happen here. I think it's a story that's going to continue to play out. And you mentioned coach speech. How do you know when a coach is lying? His lips are moving. Because, they don't say publicly what you want to hear, but sometimes when you're experienced like you and me, you can read between the lines. I think we don't know yet. What they wanted to do with Winston was have him learn from Sean Payton and Drew Brees for a year. Brees hasn't officially retired, but the reports are indicating that they expect him to retire. Could this be a training camp battle? Jameis Winston has not earned a starting job. I think regardless, Michael Thomas showed he can catch passes from anybody last year. I mean, Taysom Hill really showed that he had the radar for him. Taysom Hill, to me, I get concerned he becomes like Lamar Jackson. Like if they start him over a full season, he'll be a better runner than he is a passer. Although, when we did see him start, though, the play as a passer was kind of up and down. But I think he showed more promise than Lamar Jackson, and he had he has better receivers than Lamar Jackson too. But my another long-winded point by the King here is that both of these guys are question marks. But after what we saw last year, for Alvin Kamara's sake, we want it to be Winston because it was just a different type of offense that killed Kamara. So we have a lot of moving pieces. Like I said with the Lions, it's too early to tell right now in February how things are going to flesh out. We haven't had the draft. We haven't had free agency. We're going to go even deeper into the preseason with New Orleans because there could be a training camp battle at quarterback there.
Do you think, and this is just my thought, that we could see a situation where Jameis Winston is the quote-unquote starting quarterback, but it turns into a situation where Taysom Hill has his own set of plays, his own packages, where he comes in for and is under center, and then there's a package of plays for Jameis Winston as well? You don't see it often, the quarterback subbing in and out for one another, but it is different skill sets there, and a situation where both could be effective with the proper play calling designed for each player.
Well, they should be paying them a lot of money to do that. I mean, it seems strategically like, do that. Have two different types of quarterbacks. One, Winston's the lead guy, but still, Winston threw a ton of interceptions. We know that, but he never had the support of a quality running game either. And a good defense on the other side, a good enough defense on the other side. But then again, Winston leaves, they plug in Brady, they bring in a few new pieces, everything's fine. In Tampa Bay, more than fine. So Winston's got a lot to prove there. So it's conceivable, but they're paying Hill a lot of money to do it. So to me, things are really unclear. If you're in a dynasty or a keeper league, you just got to hold on and wait and see what happens here.
Yeah, gonna be fun. And guys, I want to remind all the listeners, head over to RotoBaller.com.
And the viewers.
Absolutely. On YouTube or any of the podcasts, wherever you listen to your podcasts, wherever you're at, RotoBaller.com. Head over there and check out all the great content at RotoBaller.com. Whether it's DFS or season-long formats, baseball, football, basketball, MMA, esports, NASCAR, PGA, whatever it is you're looking for, you'll see tons of content there from Scott and myself. And you can save yourself some money. Sign up for any of the premium packages. If you want to tell them Scott Engel sent you, sign up using the promotional code KING. If you want to tell them Anthony Aniano sent you, use the promotional code ACES, thus King and Pocket Aces Show, and sign up and get some of the great content out there on RotoBaller.com. You have all the great YouTube videos, the podcasts, and obviously Scott, Josh Hayes, Real Talk Raf, myself, Michael Florio on RotoBaller Radio on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio. And now, folks, we're going to pivot. Let's get into some baseball talk right here on the King and Pocket Aces Fantasy Sports Show. And where back, guys. The premiere episode of the King and Pocket Aces show. Scott Engel, Anthony Aniano, happy to be with you. And thank you for sitting through and enjoying, hopefully, all our football talk. But now, Scott, it's time to pivot, okay? We are knocking on the door of spring training, of pitchers and catchers, and Major League Baseball. And it looks like 162 games are on the schedule for Major League Baseball. And speaking of pitchers and catchers, just the other day, the big signing, an astronomical amount of money. Trevor Bauer, a 3-year deal with the Los Angeles Dodgers, and really paying him to be their third starter, right? After Kershaw, after Walker Buehler. What is your take on Trevor Bauer heading out west to the Los Angeles Dodgers?
Well, we all hoped he was going to be on the Mets bus.
Yes, we did.
Yeah. You like the Mets bus?
I do like the Mets bus.
Yeah, there we go.
I've been on that Mets bus a long time.
Yeah. But, about that, though, I just want to get my rant off here about, all the Mets fans.
I was hoping.
About, how they struck out on all the big free agents. I guess the Lindor thing never happened. Come on, they got Lindor, Carrasco. You didn't get Real Muto, but they wanted James McCann.
But Scott, I'm sorry to cut you off. But what Met fans don't realize is they didn't want Real Muto. They were never in the game for Real Muto, right?
That's an excellent point, because Steve Cohen came out during the initial press conference, which I sat through, saying we're not going to spend like drunken sailors. It's like Met fans are expecting them to be like the 90s Yankees or something like that, and they wanted Real Muto, Springer, Bauer, and Arenado all together. And there was no inkling that when they were talking about the free agents, nobody mentioned Francisco Lindor. They got Lindor and Carrasco,
yep.
And people are forgetting about that.
Yeah.
From a fan perspective. And they got Trevor May, and they got James McCann, who's one of the best catchers out there. My friend Rich Mancuso from New York Sports Day says that he's talked to some baseball insiders and that Joey Lucchesi has sleeper potential.
Yep.
Met fans, okay? 2 years ago, Joey Lucchesi would have been the biggest acquisition of the offseason.
That would have been what you were supposed to get excited over.
Yeah, there's too much of a doom and gloom mentality among Met fans, and especially the Met fans who are also Jet fans. The offseason's not over, and this team has done a lot.
All right, Scott. So Mets were disappointed, no doubt about it. They didn't get to Bauer. But ultimately, Bauer's out west. Trevor Bauer with a career 3.9 ERA, an ERA over 4, more seasons than not, okay? Had a terrific 11 games and 70-something innings last year. Is Trevor Bauer now the ace, the $40 million a year pitcher in your mind when you draft finish with, right? You're involved in the RotoBaller mock. Is he now that top echelon pitcher that people suddenly want to put him in?
Me personally, some people talked about him. I saw him ranked as high as like the 4th, 5th ranked pitcher, in some sites. To me, there's about a good 7, 8 guys that I'd like to take above him. Yeah, he won a Cy Young Award last year, but it was in a truncated season. It was a third of a normal Major League Baseball season, so it really could have just been a strong run over a full season. This was to win the Cy Young Award last year. I'm sorry, it comes with an asterisk. You were the best pitcher for a third of a regular season. He's never had numbers close to that over a full season. Now, he was very good in 2018, but he's pretty much been an every other year sort of pitcher. And I don't think he's shown that he's in that league where I want to consider him with like Luis Castillo and Yu Darvish. I think he's a top 10 starter to me, but not top 5. Going to Los Angeles, where he doesn't even have to be the number 1. It's a much better pitcher's ballpark. The high mound always gives a pitcher an advantage there. I like him, but I'm not blown away by him to the point where I want to take him as my top fantasy starter in the draft.
No, I agree with you. If he's my number one when it comes to my starting pitching, I'm a little nervous about that.
I've waited too long.
Yeah, you did. You waited too long. So let's play a little game here. Let's play a little game real quick. I think we agree Jacob deGrom, Derrick Cole, Shane Bieber. I think those are your top three. I don't think we're flinching over that. And somebody may disagree of the order, so no order there. DeGrom, Cole, Bieber. Okay? You're looking for a starting pitcher. The top three are off the board. You, Darvish, or Trevor Bauer?
Probably Lucas Giolito after that.
Okay. I'm going to name something. What you, Darvish? I would take Luis Castillo. I agree with you on Giolito. What about Max Scherzer?
Scherzer's really getting up there, because of workload. I'd probably slightly lean towards Bauer. But if somebody wanted to take Scherzer, it's not crazy. Last year I was drafting Scherzer still like third, but he's really starting to get up there.
What about Walker Buehler, his new team?
I'd definitely take Buehler over Bauer.
So would I. I love Walker.
I had a pretty good finish in Tout Wars last year, and Buehler was so highly regarded. Now, and he's so humble that he probably won't like me doing this, but we bow to Ron Chandler, okay? If Ron Chandler is willing to trade me Freddie Freeman from Walker Buehler, that's all I need to know.
Fair point. Now, the one I find interesting is Aaron Nola. Is Aaron Nola ahead of Trevor Bauer in your mind?
Yes.
Really?
We did the rollerballer mock, and Nola was my first pick as a pitcher in the third round. I just feel like with Bauer, if he regresses to what we saw 2 years ago, that it's going to be something of a bust or just underachieving for me. Whereas I feel like I don't have to worry about that with Nola.
Yeah, I mean, Trevor Bauer's bust is an ERA that could easily approach 4. He's done that enough in his career, right?
Yeah.
So that's 9 players. I take Max Scherzer out of there. That's 9 pitchers that I think you and I kind of agree we would all take over Trevor Bauer. And then there's still a Brandon Woodruff. Keep in mind, if we're going to talk small samples, Clayton Kershaw pitched to a 2.16 ERA last year. Jack Flaherty had a bad first sample, but I still think there's a ton of upside in Jack Flaherty. So there are pitchers there that suddenly are now in the conversation with Trevor Bauer, where maybe somebody else. My point, I guess, is this, Scott, and I think you agree. Somebody's going to reach for Trevor Bauer in the draft, and we're recommending it not be you, correct?
Yeah, it look like we said he falls into that end of the top 10 sort of range for me, and it looks like for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, Scott, I want to circle back, though, to the Mets because you ranted. I saw some things you put on Twitter about the Mets, and I think one of the biggest injustices is the fact that you and I haven't gone to Citi Field together. Hopefully this year we're able to remedy that. I believe hot dogs on me. Now,
the hot dogs on me. I get to the press room. I go to the press room. I get them a little cheaper.
There you go.
Yeah.
The question is for me is when people complained about the Mets in their offseason, and I agree with you, I thought they had a good, not great offseason. The lack of a DH announced yet at the time of this taping in the National League has certainly impacted their free agency plan. The truth of the matter is, and I saw an article in the New York Daily News, the author wrote that if the Mets brought in a center fielder, wait for this, that Pete Alonso would be on the bench because Dom Smith would be at first base, which I don't agree with at all. Like, that's ridiculous.
Pete Alonso is only going to be on the bench when the Mets are up. And he's not, it's not his turn at bat.
Absolutely. But the problem becomes is unless there's no DH, as much as a Met fan would want an upgrade in center field, they got to have Dom Smith in the lineup, and they got to have Brandon Nimmo in the lineup. And that's your left fielder and your center fielder. Now, defensively, it's not very good. But, whatever center fielder you wanted him to bring in, the way Major League Baseball has handled this DH situation has kind of hindered whatever plan the Mets maybe wanted to put into place.
Well, it's getting crystallized this week. As we tape this, Sean, please switch to VCR tape. I think you might need to rewind one. But they want to keep Smith's bat in the lineup. They signed Albert Amora. Could be, defensive replacement, center field. A very good defense. Kind of like a Juan Lagares type, just doesn't hit. The hit tool has really gone down with him because in our RotoBaller mock that you're going to see published on the site soon, Dominic Smith went in the 9th round. So
wow.
I think if there's no DH, they want Smith in left field. They'll live with it. They'll have Nimmo in center, and they'll have Alonso at first. It would be easier if they had the DH because then they could DH Alonso and play Smith at first. But those two bats are going to be in the lineup. And, like I said, the offseason isn't over for that team. So fantasy-wise, I think a lot of people are having confidence in Dom Smith, who I find very interesting because I was in a charity event with him about 3 years ago where his roster spot wasn't guaranteed, and he said he wasn't crying about it at all. His attitude was, I understand that I haven't blossomed as the team expected. I'm paraphrasing here. I have to earn it, so I understand. And he said, I look across town, and Aaron Judge was kind of a late bloomer. Maybe I can be that too, and that's exactly what happened. And I admire Dominic Smith for it. He said, I understand why the Mets are very skeptical about me, he said a few years ago. I have to prove it, and I'm working hard to do that. And he did. He really did. He was a guy who, whenever they gave him the opportunity to pinch hit, he delivered. If he played on an off day, he delivered. And then he starts to play full-time, and all of a sudden, this guy came out of nowhere as a fantasy sleeper, and he's somebody who's going in the first 12 rounds this season. With Pete Alonso, the power is there. What is the drag going to be on the batting average? It's not going to be Rhys Hoskins-like, but if you're playing in an OBP league, you might prefer Hoskins, actually. But look, as much as Alonso is that ton of power, you can find a lot of power later in the draft and power that can drag on your batting average. So for me, Alonso is customarily somebody that I don't go for in the early rounds.
Okay, it does make sense. You can't expect 50 home runs from him, but I think I agree. Dom Smith is going to give you
40 can be there, but
40 can be there. But he's got to give you 240.
Guys a little bit of a higher that give you. I prefer a combination of batting average and pop where I can get 265, 30.
Yes, I mean if Alonso gives you 240, I think that's a win. But the 240 is a questionable number. That's for sure.
I think he continues to get better as a hitter, but I can think he get 250.
I'll take 250.
Without
you get 250 and 40 and 100. It's a rock.
250 and 40. I think that's legitimate. But when I'm in the early rounds, I'm looking at combinations of power and speed, power and average.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I can wait on pop. Let me wait a little later and get a Jorge Soler or Jared Kelenic or something like that. Or the kid from Anaheim. What's his name again? The first baseman?
Anderson?
No. The kid who came out of nowhere last year. It's on the top of my tongue.
I know who I'm drawing a complete blank on his name right now, but yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Walsh.
Yeah, Jared Walsh.
Jared Walsh.
I can get Jared Walsh much later, and I'm willing to take that ticket.
Yeah. No, that's a fair point. You can find power late in any draft. As you said, I see it all the time in the tout draft and hold. Power is the one category you never have a hard time finding as you continue to draft in that. The batting average and the speed, though, definitely starts to fade as the draft goes on. Scott, real quick, speaking of power and speed, George Springer now playing center field in Toronto. A nice lineup there with the Blue Jays. Do we expect similar numbers from Springer now that he's in Toronto? Is it a better situation, a worse situation than it was in Houston for him?
I think he's going to put up similar numbers no matter where he is. I think we know what he is. The numbers weren't too different last year from the year before. You know what you're getting, in terms of the power. translated to, well over 30 last year over a full season. Springer's 31. But he's still at a point in his career where he's not old yet. Toronto's looks starting to look loaded over there. Is the lineup as good as Houston? I don't know, but I don't think it's to the point where I'm going to expect any significant drop off from Springer. Would you agree?
Yeah, I agree. I think Springer is his numbers. He's 270. He's 25 to 30 home runs. He's never shown a propensity to striking out. He keeps it under 20% every year, and his walk rate's always above 10%.
Yeah, the strikeout rate was down last year, too.
Yes, 17%, the lowest of his career, granted over 50 games. So, when he hit 265, a terrific on-base percentage guy, almost 360 last year, 361 lifetime. And, when you look at his career home run totals, he's been 30, 29, 22. The home runs have been there. Doesn't run much. It's been since 2015 since he had double-digit stolen bases.
That ain't happening.
That ain't happening anymore. I agree. I don't think anybody wants him to run. Big contract. You want him to stay healthy. But he's going to give you a good enough batting average, score you some runs, hit you some home runs, and drive in RBIs. Interesting, bats leadoff, so kind of limits him a little bit at the RBI position, although he did have 96 RBIs in 2019, but that's the only time in his career he's had over 90 RBIs. Currently slated to bat leadoff for Toronto, so RBI opportunities might be limited, but a ton of run-scoring opportunities, Scott, in that Blue Jays lineup.
Yeah, it certainly is. It was a good spot for him. I think no matter where he went, if he went to the Mets, I don't know if he's the ideal defensive center fielder that they would want it out of there. But Toronto's going for it. They're trying to keep up with the other teams in the division. Tampa Bay, the Yankees, etc. So it was a good signing for them. And I think their front office does a good job. They got Ryu last year, and everybody said, "Oh, he's going to go to the American League. He's going to get hit around hard." And, I think they have a good eye for picking up free agents who can make a significant impact and not bust.
Yep. Now let's pivot over to the NBA here, quick, Scott. Big trade in the NBA. Derrick Rose returns to the Knicks.
Okay. I wouldn't call it a big trade.
Well, for a Knicks team that's on the fringe, I think they're excited about it. But really, fantasy-wise, how does this affect Emmanuel Quickly of the Knicks and Derrick Rose's impact on the young player?
Yeah, we're going to have to see how Derrick Rose fits into the backcourt. His first time in New York wasn't great, but this is a new era, and, he's had his best years under Tom Thibodeau. He played well in the second unit with Detroit. You always have to be careful with him because of injuries. So it was a good fit. He wasn't quite doing what he did last year, but still very good off the bench. The Knicks want to improve that second unit, I think, in terms of scoring punch. So what they can do is they can move quickly off the ball. I don't think Thibodeau is an idiot to the point where he's going to start, telling Quickly, go sit with Kevin Knox, and we're not going to give you any minutes there. He's given Quickly minutes, and Quickly has made key plays. He played in the clutch. I picked him up last week in 2 weeks when he had 25 and 31-point games. But, then Alfred Payton all of a sudden was probably reading the headlines too. He had 2 good games. Quickly's minutes went down. His minutes were fluctuating. Whether Rose was in the picture or not, I don't think you can rely Quickly consistently from fantasy minutes from a seasonal perspective. He's more of a DFS play, I think, where you can take the risk. But, how does this really affect things in New York? There's a bunch of ways that this could go. They could leave Alfred Payton in the starting lineup, even though I'd probably rather have Rose there, but you got to watch with Rose's injuries. And then you have Rose, and they move quickly off the ball, and the second unit, and the two of them are playing better, and that's better for the Knicks from a pure team perspective, but it hurts Quickly. In terms of fantasy output. But then what if they move Rose into the starting lineup? They leave Quickly where he is, and he's still the main scorer there on the second unit. We have to see how this fleshes out, but I don't think you're going to be able to rely on Quickly regardless from a fantasy perspective. Now, if you're looking at quickly for the future from a fantasy perspective, this is great because Derrick Rose they praised him in Detroit for the way he worked with the young kids like Killian Hayes. And he's going to come here and he's going to take quickly under his wing. And as we see in other sports all the time, when a veteran takes a young guy under the wing, that's really great. Derrick Rose has played at a very high level. So if it makes things kind of unclear for quickly in the short term, it's great for him in the longer term.
Interesting point there. I do agree with it. Now, another young player coming on, Jakob Poeltl, Scott, somebody coming on of late. What's your take of him?
This really depends on the health of LaMarcus Aldridge. Aldridge's up there in years, and he's had trouble staying healthy this year. Sore hip going into this week. And, really driving me crazy in the FSGA basketball league. I can't keep him in the lineup. But Jakob Poeltl, every time he's gotten in there, he's been a hot pickup there. The stock's rising on Jakob Poeltl, because, this is a kid that can give you 15 points and between 8 and 10 rebounds a night. And really a nice plug-in, I think. And, if Aldridge continues to deal with injuries, Poeltl's somebody that can really help you in some categories there.
A couple of injuries in the NBA right now. Lauri Markkanen out 2 to 4 weeks with a shoulder sprain. DeAndre Hunter, a knee surgery. Larry Nance, 4 to 6 weeks with a finger injury. If these players are on your fantasy basketball roster, you mentioned the FSGA basketball draft, how do we overcome this? Well, how do we handle this?
Well, first off, you have to look who's going to pick up the playing time there. And, the Bulls have 2 guys now who can figure into the mix. I enjoy watching the Bulls. Thaddeus Young is a great, like Walt Frazier called him a point center, which I thought was a great analogy. But Patrick Williams is really starting to pick it up, and he's been a hot pickup. He might not be available on your waiver wire, but if you did pick him up, I think you feel good about it. The kid, is showing that he can get those kind of 15 points, kind of 7 to 9 rebounds a night. Once in a while, maybe pop something from the outside. And, I think they have to replace Markkanen with a combination of players here. Denzel Valentine has stepped up and, is maybe going to get some more minutes there, try to add some scoring punch. So there's 2 guys I think you got to keep on your fantasy radar. And then you mentioned, I think Atlanta was next. Cam Reddish is a guy that I picked up in one of my leagues and where I have daily moves and going to play wait and see with it. I think he can get more opportunity there, but what kind of consistency can we expect from Cam Reddish? I'm still skeptical there. And then you also mentioned Cleveland and Larry Nance. I think there's 2 opportunities there. Taurean Prince can certainly score in double figures. How many rebounds I'm going to get? I think that's wait and see. If I can get 6-7 rebounds tonight, I'm happy. And then there's also, Cedi Osman, who's been on and off my roster, who has played well at times, and other times he kind of fades even when he gets the minutes. So I think we're going to have to see how that works out with Cleveland too.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how these teams overcome these injuries and how fantasy rosters overcome these injuries as well. Now, Scott, last topic I wanted to hit you up on, and I couldn't wait for this. I will openly admit I know next to nothing about NASCAR. But like we know, Daytona 500 is coming up. You, the Engel family, know a ton about NASCAR. So I am going to sit here. I am going to set my DFS lineups for the NASCAR 500 on your word. So when we look at NASCAR, and for all the NASCAR fans out there, how are we building this lineup? And what's to be expected at the Daytona 500?
Shameless promo. The first thing you do is go to rotoballer.com and get our NASCAR season pass, which is now available with myself, 6-time tournament winner on DraftKings, Sean Engel, Justin Carter, and Dustin Albino, and more. We give you everything that you need every week. We have an optimizer. We have a research station, everything you need for the Daytona 500. Now, when we're recording this, we still have a lot to be worked out. We have the 2 qualifying races this week, and, that's basically going to, play a big key in setting the field. So we have to wait and see. You want to set your lineup later in the week, when we have the most qualifying and practice information possible. You ask how to set your lineup. That's the first thing we don't do. We don't set a lineup, especially at Daytona. We always talk about, Sean and I, diversifying your lineups, because fantasy NASCAR, especially in DFS, is like any other sport, especially as you head into the Daytona 500. One wreck and that lineup shot. If you had to, I had people call me up, hey, Scott, help me set a lineup. I'm like, it's not how it works. Not like other fantasy sports. You need lineups, plural, because one wreck or one mishap in the pits or one pit road penalty, and your lineup gets killed for the day. So you have to diversify, especially at Daytona, because these super speedway races are known for a ton of crashes, and you could see half the field wiped out by the time we're heading to the final laps, and some unknown is going to win the race or push for winning the race. There's a lot of unpredictability at Daytona. If you want to dive into fantasy NASCAR, a lot of people do it at Daytona, but that's really not the best track to give you a picture of how fantasy NASCAR results usually are, because of all the wrecks, everything gets jumbled and anybody can get knocked out at any time. So have multiple lineups, diversify as much as you can, especially for Daytona. And if you get frustrated at Daytona, move on to the next race where things are going to be more predictable. And when you're looking at how to predict it, we look at past performance on a track at number one, and recent trends. There aren't going to be a lot of recent trends early this year, so we're going to have to look back a little towards the end of last year, etc. We're going to give you all the loop data over at RotoBaller.com. Loop data is the advanced statistics for NASCAR, because they have like electronic loops embedded in the track that record everything. So, driver rating is a very important statistic. It's kind of like quarterback rating for football. It tells you, while taking out what they call race deals. Race deals are like wrecks and pit roast penalties. It evaluates every driver who's the best at that track based on a mathematical formula. So we're going to have a lot of stats like that you're going to have to consider. And one other thing to do is, NASCAR DFS is not like other DFS. You don't want to go to the bottom of the entry list and pick out, say, a Reed Sorensen or a J.J. Yaley. There's no such thing as a punt play in fantasy NASCAR. If you're going to the bottom of the rung, you're killing your lineup, because the guys at the very end of the pricing ladder are going to finish towards the back of the pack just about every time. So you really can't front load your lineup with a whole bunch of superstar drivers. It's about achieving balance, and we're going to help you do that every week on RotoBaller.com.
Give me one rider. Give me one driver that anchors your lineup for the Daytona 500 in the DFS. One name.
That's hard, because like the top ones. See, that's the thing. You asked me one driver, right?
And you can't. There's too many guys.
It's diversifying lineups. If I could only afford to do one lineup and I had a $500 entry, though,
yeah,
put him on. I think it's hard to bet against Denny Hamlin.
Okay.
Yeah, but I think you want to anchor around guys like Hamlin, Logano, Keselowski, etc. I really don't trust Kyle Busch on the super speedway. It's just too risky.
All right, fair enough, everybody.
And my friend Austin Dillon, I think, is always a good play on a super speedway.
There you go. A little NASCAR talk.
We'll have a lot more later this week on RotoBaller.com and on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio on Saturday mornings. I'm the second best DFS NASCAR analyst in the family. Sean Engel will be appearing to give you the best picks on Saturday mornings on RotoBaller Radio on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio, 8 to 10 Saturday mornings.
Love it. Absolutely love it. Listen, everybody, thanks for finding the time. for viewing, listening, tuning in to the episode 1 of the King and Pocket Aces Fantasy Sports Show. Scott Engel, the King. Follow him on Twitter at Scott E. the King. Follow me on Twitter at Aniano Fantasy. Head over to RotoBaller.com, whether it's NASCAR, baseball, football, basketball, PGA, MMA, esports, whatever it is, RotoBaller.com has you covered. DFS or season-long format. Sign up using the promotional code KING or the promotional code ACES. Let them know who sent you over at RotoBaller.com. Scott, this has been fun. We'll be back again next week. Scotty, great job as always, my friend.
The same thing to you. You know, this episode 1 was a lot better than the episode 1 of Star Wars. This is a lot better than the Phantom Menace. We don't have any Jar Jar Binks here.
No Jar Jar Binks.
Nothing like that. Don't forget, we got our fantasy baseball season pass as well. You can use all those promotional codes as well.
Draft guide, everything is in there.
A lot of fun to be with you, and we're going to have a lot of fun with this. Glad we're doing it.
Yeah, absolutely, guys. So check this out each and every week, YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts or over at rotoballer.com. We'll see you next time right here on the King and Pocket Aces Fantasy Sports Show. Have a good one, everybody.